Okay, in this module, I want to talk about writing principles and general stuff that you have to look out for when you are writing YouTube scripts, right? So, and later, and in a later module, I have a full copywriting course by one of my good friends, Lucas, right? He decided to film it for us. It's an hour-long course where it goes very, very in-depth into the specific writing principles that you need to know if you want to write a great YouTube script. So let's get into it. So the laws of YouTube script writing. Number one is to write like you talk. This is the most important law of them all. You need to know how to write like you talk. Because most script writers will mistakenly approach their YouTube scripts with an overly formal or academic tone, right? They'll think it's like writing an essay, forgetting that YouTube is primarily a conversational medium. Right, so write like you talk means you need to craft your script in a natural and conversational way that mirrors how you'd explain a topic to a friend. Right, so this approach helps create a more personal connection like with your audience and makes your content more accessible and enjoyable, right? So you need to write like you talk. Okay, so you know how plants seem to make their own food, right? Well, that's basically what photosynthesis is. It's like the plant's way of cooking up a meal using sunlight as a stove. They take in light and turn it into energy they can use, kind of like how we get energy from the food that we eat. So this is very conversational style of writing, right? It's not robotic. It's not like you're writing an essay. It is very obviously something that it is very obviously something that like you could say at like a dinner table, right? Where it's like, okay, you want to make sure that the writing is very conversational. So if I were to break down specifically the elements of writing like you talk, of write like you talk, right? You need to, number one, use contractions. So it's your doesn't to sound more natural. So instead of you are or you will, right? You replace it like that. Include conversational phrases. So, basically kind of like using simpler vocabulary and explain complex terms. Ask rhetorical questions to engage the viewer. And so like you don't always want to ask questions, right? When you ask a rhetorical question, the question must actually be effective in order for the writing to be effective. Okay, so use rhetorical questions sparingly, but when you use them, it must be very, very effective. Number 5, use analogies or comparisons to everyday experiences, right? Number 6, vary sentence length, including some shorter, punchier sentences. So varying the sentence length, so you can go short sentence, and then long sentence, medium length sentence, short sentence, long sentence, medium length sentence, long sentence, right? So by varying your sentence length, right, instead of having everything sound the exact same, or the feel or the pacing feel the exact same, you definitely want to vary the length. Sometimes you can also vary the sentence structure, right? Varying the sentence structure means instead of starting off, oh, I did this, I wanted to do this, right? If you have all of these sentences starting with I, it becomes very difficult to follow. But if you have a script that, starts with, oh, I, with all of this in effect, blah, 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 by doing this, So if you start the sentence in a different way, so instead of starting with I, you start with a verb, or you start with by, so that way you can vary the sentence structure, and that can make for a more conversational talking style. Okay, principle number 2, it's show, not tell, right? Don't let the voiceover tell the viewer something, right? But you need to show the viewer something. So instead of starting an intro with 3 provocative questions about a crime murder case, right? You could show a crime scene with very tense music, right? It'll create some type of tension and anticipation. So you need to allow enough breathing room in your script, otherwise the editor will not be able to bring these scenes to life. So instead of saying he hit the suspect with a bat, you could write in the script he hit the suspect with this thing, and include editor instructions in the script to show a bat as B-roll, right? So here this is more like visual storytelling. So there are millions of other things that you can do to narrate a story without a voiceover. So you could play phone calls or voice messages, show text messaging between people, show certain rooms or scenarios or maps, and much more. So this might sound like the editor will spend days animating stuff, but a bit of creativity, modern AI tools can speed up a lot of this editing. So the key lesson we want to take that I want you to take from this is you want to think visually, right? So it's not enough to write the script, right? You need to imagine what the final product, the video will look like, and include editor instructions accordingly, right? So show, not tell is one of the strongest principles, right? When you can use an example, right? Do not directly tell the viewer. And number 3, it's to not use ChatGPT to write. So you will only use ChatGPT to do research and to get inspiration, right? It is very, very obvious when something is written by ChatGPT, right? It's very obvious when language is written by ChatGPT. That doesn't tell, right? So I highly encourage you to not use it to write, right? You can use it for research, and you can use it to make the writing process a lot smoother. there are tools out there like subscriber.ai, which we have one module on, just talking about how you can use ChatGPT in order to, or more like how you can use Subscriber in order to write a full script. That is a tool that you can use once you are more proficient at writing. But if not, I wouldn't highly recommend using AI to write it. I just use AI to increase the speed of my research, which we also have a module talking about that specifically. So other things would be this writing guide. So whenever I write a script, I follow this exact writing style guide, right? So this is the writing style guide that I kind of came up with working with dozens of clients. So number one is always use contractions, which I talked about previously. So your rather than you are, will rather than we will, let's rather than let us, don't rather than do not. And the only time it's useful is if we're emphasizing on one of the words of the contractions. So I genuinely could not believe, right, instead of couldn't believe, right, when I first saw my e-commerce product, right? In this example, you can imagine yourself saying, I genuinely could not believe. So the non-contraction makes sense. But YouTubers generally don't see things like this in their videos. So I would avoid non-contractions at all costs. So basically use contractions, right? Number two, never use the passive voice. Okay, this is really, really important too, right? You can also read this article. I'll link this specific document, right? But passive versus active voice is, passive means that, the character had something happen to them. So, my mom brought me to the grocery store, right? Versus I went to the grocery store, right? My mom brought me to the grocery store means that, you are more like, say I'm the main character, I'm passive, right? That means things are happening to me, right? And if there's one thing about a character, of the main character, is you don't want to make the main character passive, right? Because of a passive character is not a likable character, right? If you read a lot of the storytelling books, they'll tell you that you want to make the character an active character, because when the active character is doing something, that means he's pushing the story forward, right? And if I'm pushing the story forward and I am and I'm actually trying to make a difference, I'm trying to change emotionally, I'm trying to do stuff, that makes me more of a likable character, right? And you absolutely need a likable character if you want to write a great YouTube story, right? So number three, right? Remember that you're writing for a video script. So that means when you write something, ask yourself, would I actually say this in real life? So this is write like you talk. Number four, always use people's first name, right? So if this is a book by Nassim Taleb, right? So what Nassim talks about here is not in this book. Taleb discusses, right? So this is simple, right? Use people's first names. Number five, for scripts, most of the time I've written word for word, but confirm this with the specific client before writing as bullet points, okay? Number six, don't use dashes because it breaks up the teleprompter. Depends on the specific client, of course. Number seven, same goes for brackets, right? It breaks up the flow. Generally, we don't use brackets in scripts. Number eight, always think of how we can use diagrams and examples to liven things up, right? So this is related to the point of visuals. How can we show, not tell, right? How can we show something visually? And number nine, analogies and stories are must, right? Include them wherever relevant in the script. So analogies, if you're not sure what analogies are, analogies is like, when I'm doing something, it's kind of like doing this, right? So it's like, okay, you explain a complex concept with something a lot similar and a lot more relatable. Stories are stories, so we need to avoid all of that. We need to include those as well. So words to avoid, words and phrases to avoid, right? Replacement suggestions. So this is just a list, right? Here you can read them as well as change it to and, however, change it to but, a number of lots. So you can read through all of this, but it's really important that you try to avoid certain words and phrases because it's not conversational in nature. So pretty much if you're unsure of what words you can or cannot use, you can continue adding on to this guide, but this is kind of the guide that I've came up with that you can just, that you can pretty much just straight up use. And if you are like, before I start writing any script, I will always go through this writing guide. And that way it reminds me, okay, what can I use? What can I not use? And whenever I'm editing a script, I'll always go through this guide too. What can I use? What words can I use? What words can I not use? How can I replace certain words? So if you have a script that has like therefore, and you want to check for therefore, you can just do an easy Control F and you can search therefore, right? So over here, therefore, right? And then you can find all the parts of the script with therefore, and then you can place it very easily, right? Obviously, these words aren't one-for-one exchangeable, but you need to refine it that way. Okay, so last thing, okay? So this is a script QA or an editing checklist, right? QA means quality assurance, okay? So you need to go through all of these steps. So in general, your script is the language incredibly simple in the script. Okay, if it's incredibly simple, nice. Does the language match the target audience's awareness level? Does the language match the target audience's level of sophistication? Would you pay $100 for your video? Okay, so this is really important. If you wouldn't pay $100 for your script, right? If the viewer wouldn't pay $100 to watch this video, is the video really that good? If the video isn't that good, then nah, probably not, right? Number 5, right? Would you watch this video? Right? If you wouldn't watch this video, then the script is probably not good. Especially this is for higher paying scripts. That's usually not the case, right? And then these are all a must. Okay, I'll go through how to find these in a future module, but you need to include B-roll, include clips, include photos, include animation, include sound. Right? I'm going to show you how to do this in the specific script, but you need to include as many of these or all of these in your script so that it's a lot easier for your client, for the client to edit the video, or for the editor to edit the video. Hooks, right? No jargon, no repetition, no over-explaining, reasonable assumptions, appropriate credentials. Does the first line validate the title and thumbnail? Does every sentence has its place? Did we establish expectations and sticks clearly? Is it clear that it is important that the viewer watches the rest of the video? Okay. Body. Okay, I've made it clear we are building towards the next step. It's clear why the audience should care. I've provided something actionable. I provided a clear example to anchor my point. Okay, and lastly, outro and call to action, right? Do I only have one call to action? Do I make it a point that links to the current video? Did I widen the curiosity gap? Do you promise a specific transformation? Okay, so this isn't one of those checklists where it's bad, average, good, or great, right? You need all of these. Okay, you need to check off all of these for every single script that you're writing. Okay, so this is a personal checklist that I use. I'm giving it to you guys for free. If you guys have any questions, drop me a message.